Today's video, we're going to focus on one of the more underrated weapons, and this is part of a series that I'm going to be doing for all these brand new weapons that are going to be coming to Warzone eventually with that integration on December 10th. So it's good to get a good idea of how these weapons look now. They're going to make some slight tweaks here, but overall I would imagine that the weapons are going to behave very similarly. They'll just kind of balance them out, especially in terms of bullet velocity. So the overall goal of this is for you to better understand the individual attachments so that if you have a specific way you want to play with the weapon, or maybe you thought it sucked at first, or maybe you thought it was godly, hey, maybe it could get even better. That's the overall point of this, so that you can figure out the individual attachments that are going to work for you as a player, instead of me just saying, copy this, this is the best, because I might have a slightly different playstyle than you. This is a series I've had for quite a while. If you do enjoy the video, learn something new, please do me a favor, hit that like button. And if you're brand new, want to find your way back for more Call of Duty content, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. And if you'd like to see another weapon featured in this type of video, make sure you comment that down below. So generally, when you want to compare the individual weapons head to head, you want to see how they rank in their individual category. So that's what we're going to kind of take a look at. I'm going to go through the various stats for this weapon, and then that'll give us a good indication of where it's going to excel over the competitors, how its recoil looks, all these different various things. So in terms of overall effective range, it's tied for second with the XM4. So this is pretty competitive. The only weapon that has a default longer range in terms of the rifle category is the Krig, with about 5 meters more, which is mostly negligible, especially once you start messing with attachments. It works itself out where you're going to mostly have the same kill potential. If someone's a little bit further, maybe you need to mix in a headshot, so it kind of works itself out. In terms of fire rate, it is the third fastest rifle in the game currently. It's behind the FAMAS, or the FFAR, which got a huge nerf recently and kind of got nerfed into the ground. And the next option is the XM4, which has a slightly faster rate of fire, and when that'll come into play when we're talking about time to kill. But overall, it has a relatively good rate of fire, which is especially nice when you're trying to track targets, because if you're missing shots and it has a slow rate of fire, you get penalized pretty hard. So the fact that it's top 3 in terms of rate of fire, that's pretty good. Obviously, there's 5 rifles, so it's kind of in the middle there. So it's kind of going to be one of those average weapons as we go throughout. It's good at a lot of stuff, but not the best at anything in particular. For muzzle velocity, it's tied for first with the Krig 6 and the FAMAS, which we talked about. You're not really going to be dealing with range with the FAMAS for how it was nerfed because of the recoil. So with this individual weapon, it's going to have a huge advantage, especially once you start stacking some of the attachments that we're talking about with bullet velocity, recoil reduction, effective damage range. You're going to get a beast of a weapon that's going to be able to compete right at the perfect ranges, whether you want to use a rifle. Definitely not up close, because that's where you're going to use SMGs, and we'll kind of see how that part plays out. So when it comes to overall damage, it ends up being third again, and in this particular case, like I said, it's going to sit right in the middle. It has a 32 damage in its effective range, and then whatever you make that effective range after attachment, it's going to drop down to 28 damage. The headshot damage is going to be 44 and 39 for those various ranges as well. And what that all boils down to, what that ends up meaning, is it's generally going to be 5 to 6 shots to kill. If you mix in some headshots, it's going to be a 4 shot to kill. If you only land headshots, it will always be 4 shot to kill, regardless of the range. Even though it's a little less practical, you can see that it could be anywhere between 4 to 6 shots, depending on the range and where you're landing those shots. So that's the overall damage. Let's go ahead and take a look at the recoil pattern. So we have various recoil blots right here done from the same distances, and I've kind of put the 2 different colors so you get a good indication of what's doing what. In this first example, we have the base QBZ-83 with the stock ammo. That's just the 30 rounds. You kind of has a little bit of a little pattern here. If you did release the trigger, you could probably get some good burst action here and repeat that pattern, since it is a repeatable pattern. We got predictive recoil in this game is back, right? And then it bounces off and it has this other spread up here. If we put on a muzzle brake, it's going to improve the vertical recoil control slightly, and you can see it kind of plumps that down a little bit. The improved is the orange image. You can see it's tying that up significantly. If we go with the infantry compensator, it will positively impact the vertical recoil, but negatively impact the horizontal. And we can see how that it is one of the tightest spreads right here. As far as the SOCOM eliminator, should be called the recoil eliminator, because it is basically removing almost all recoil. You can see that it has a positive 17 vertical recoil control. This is also supposed to be positive. I typoed on my thing, but yeah, it's a positive 10 horizontal recoil control, which basically is the recoil eliminator with just a single attachment. This is not factoring multiple attachments. We'll get to that. So the agency suppressor is going to work as a suppressor, which basically means when you fire your weapon, you're kept off the minimap. Unless somebody has a UAV and you're not running Ghost, or and you're not moving. There's a lot of variables that go into, but basically your gunfire is not going to show up on the minimap. And then we have the task force barrel, which I advise against. You can see the blue is the normal recoil pattern, and then we got this orange one. Even though it is fairly in a straight line, it could be very manageable. The way that head glitches are and you need to be accurate, I don't really like that barrel. It's just destroying everything. Even if you combined those, I still don't see that solving the problem. You're just putting yourself in a negative situation without really any benefit, because the damage values that change, it's not really going to change your number of shots to kill. Unless at further ranges, instead of needing all 4 shots to be headshots, maybe you get 1 body shot and 3 headshots, and then it's 1 shot to kill. So it's so impractical. I would advise against that. Then once we get into the grips, we have the basic foregrip, which you can see is tightening it down, 15% reduction to horizontal. Field agent grip is helping out significantly more because it's helping in 2 different areas. It's always going to be more noticeable when you equip a vertical recoil, just because it cuts it down. Horizontal is generally where people struggle because it's a little bit of bouncing side to side, very hard to manage, versus if you go straight up, you just pull down, right? It can be a little bit easier. So there are some trade-offs, and you really know after handling the weapon. We have the field agent grip, like you said, is pretty straightforward there. We have the SFOD speed grip, which helps with only horizontal, and it ends up helping a little bit out with vertical. I think just because it doesn't have as much bounce side to side, it kind of tightens it up and gives you that vertical spray that isn't quite as big as the base. Then we have the SOCOM Eliminator plus the Field Agent. And you can see literally all the 30 bullets are going to a dot. And that is the SOCOM Recoil Eliminator and the Field Agent Grip, which is doing the most. So you're getting 23% vertical and 30% horizontal reduction, which is huge. If you want to go with the agency suppressor, you could do the same thing because the Field Agent Grip is combining with it. It's eliminating basically all recoil. You could go with the standard suppressor and the Field Agent Grip, and you can see that it is helping, but not quite as much. So one of the combos that could work is if you go with the SOCOM Eliminator, it will remove most of that gunfire and give you the maximum benefit with the field grip. So it's kind of one of these two. You kind of pick and choose what makes the most sense to you. Both of these options show drastically that this gun is going to have no recoil. It's going to shoot like a laser beam, especially once you start stacking these attachments. So now we're going to look at them head to head and see how they compare. This is only body shots, no headshots thrown in the mix. You can see the QBZ doesn't fare like particularly well. We have the AK-47 way down here. The FAMAS, what's its theoretical time to kill down here, this little orange line is around, 325 milliseconds up to a considerable distance, even 25 meters, but you're not going to be able to hit those shots consistently. That's where some of these other weapons will excel. Personally, I think the XM4 is going to be one of the more dominant guns in the game once people come around to realizing how good it is. I think a lot of people see the Krig 6 as the laser beam, but as we saw, the QBZ could be made into a laser beam. Obviously, there's going to be preferences, but the thing that I like in this game is that the rifles are fairly close together. The only real outlier here is the AK-47, so you could pretty much use any of these weapons and you're going to do well with them because they are the main meta. Obviously, AK-47, if you're a skilled player, you're going to be able to control the recoil, and you're going to win just by pure TTK, is just being faster. You can see where it drops off. The QBZ goes fairly far, and it only has a competitor of the XM4. Then they all drop off, and then they all have a significantly slower time to kill. But as you modify the class setups, you're going to push out this effective range. So here's what also happens when you only hit headshots. What we notice here is the QBZ overlaps with the FAMAS or the FFAR, and that makes it superior in my opinion because that gun has significantly more recoil. It's going to be a lot harder to hit those headshots, even with optimal attachments, especially after the nerf. These 3 rifles are basically touching the entire way, so it's fairly even. It's a push. It's going to kill, maybe a frame faster than the Krig and a frame slower than the XM4. The only outlier here is the AK-47. Personally, I think they need to nerf it in the closer range and then buff it in this further range so that it kind of brings it in together, and it will have that drop off, but basically it'll always be in line the same distance these are. So overall, I think the QBZ is a very good weapon. It's not overpowered, perfectly balanced, will probably never receive a nerf or a buff based off what we looked at so far, unless there's considerable changes to several other weapons that are not currently in the meta to kind of be brought up. But that is very unlikely. I think whatever you find in your class setup for this weapon, that's probably the way it'll be, because this weapon is very balanced and it's a very good weapon. Now let's go ahead and take a look at a couple different class setups. Obviously in this case, we get 8 attachment setups or 5 attachments, where we're going to take a look at both. So over here, it's pretty straightforward. If you want to go ahead and go with 8 attachments, you can just make sure to equip the gunfighter. You'll have 3 perks here, flak jacket, ghost, and whatever else you want in the middle. Perk 2 is kind of one of those weird ones. You can use assassin, gearhead, whatever. That's straightforward. I use a field mic generally because I was doing challenges, but I would more than likely probably use an assault pack or a jammer. Those are the main 3 I would use. And then unless you're playing an OBJ game mode, maybe a trophy system gets thrown in the mix. Semtex, stim shot are the way to go. And then what we have for the 8 attachments, you can use whatever optic you want. It's really a matter of preference. If it's going to be a long range map, it might be more advantageous to use a longer range optic, but it all depends. Maybe switch your secondary to a shotgun. I currently just have it a knife just because. When it comes to the muzzle, the SOCOM Eliminator, this is going to help with the concealment and vertical recoil. It's going to hurt a little bit with the horizontal recoil, but we counteract that obviously once we equip the other attachment, which is the Agent Field Grip, which we've already talked about. With this overall class setup, we're going to have an effective range of 91 meters, which basically means it's always going to be a 5-shot to kill unless they're outside that range. Mixing some headshots, you will get 4 shots to kill, so this thing can absolutely melt, especially with no recoil. So there's that. The thing to keep in mind with this is that you'll be on the mini map for 150 milliseconds. This is what this means with 0.15 milliseconds. So it's not 100% off. If you want to go that route, you got to go with the agency suppressor, but that will hurt your effective range and a little bit of bullet velocity. So that's why I don't really like that one, because then you feel like you have worse bullet registration as that bullet velocity comes down. I think right around 750 to 800 is normally where you start to notice a big difference between having like 550, 600, or some of the SMGs case like 300, 250. It's terrible. And then we have the barrel. I'm using the reinforced because this will help effective damage range, bullet velocity. It hurts the sprint moving speed and aim walking speed, but we can counteract those with other attachments. And then this is going to give you that effective range and that like nice bullet velocity. If you're playing on a little bit like a very small map and you know 100% nothing's going to be at long range, you could always go with this one here. It's still going to give you that penalty of the walking movement, but the bullet velocity is going to go through the roof. So you're 1250. Your bullets are hitting instantly versus having that long delay. So you got 50-50 there. And then we go to the body. Since we have to have a 5th attachment, I usually go with this one just so that I can have that reveal distance, because this attachment is pretty broken in certain scenarios, especially on cartel. If someone's on a bush, their name's going to pop up and it's going to highlight them, and it's going to be fairly easy that way. Underbarrel, field agent grip. You could go with the foregrip if you just want to go that route, because this does have a shooting movement speed, so that when you're actually firing the weapon, you're going to start to move significantly slower than your regular strafe speed. There is a penalty, but again, combining those 2 attachments, there's going to be no recoil, especially at further ranges. You can use whatever you want here. The reason I go with this 50 round fast, because you're going to get fast reload, starting ammo, all that good stuff. Most people would be like, dang, the aim down sight speed is going to be slow. But even with the 25%, this is the most broken attachment for all the guns. It'll probably receive a nerf at some point, because this removes 30% aim down sight time. This one's 10%. You know, this one, as you go down here, 15, 25. You can even go that route if you want sprint to fire. But this one's going to get rid of the flint resistant. It's going to allow you to drop shot. It's like the god attachment for these, which is airborne elastic wrap. And you can see it brings down the aim down sight to around 268, which is pretty competitive. And then we have the stock, which is going to allow for shoot movement speed that counteracts what we were just talking about a little bit, and then aim walking movement speed, which will give you a better strafe speed. So that's the one I would go with. And then when we go with the 5 attachment setup, pretty much how that would work is I would get rid of my optic because I like the clean iron sights. I'd get rid of this body attachment, the stock, and then this would be my 5 attachment setup here. I'd have no recoil with those 2 attachments. This one would give me my range or my bullet velocity. And then I'd have my fast magazine, and then I'd have the insanely good handle. And that ends up being the class setups. Feel free to hit the like button if you want to find your way back. Make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. And if you'd like to see another weapon featured, make sure you comment that down below so I know what you guys are interested in checking out. Appreciate all the support on the channel. Thank you for watching. As always, have a great day.